Good morning and welcome to the Three Things with Dr. B. At TheMuDojo, we believe that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, and we are ultimately and intimately connected to one another, and sometimes in ways we cannot fully explain. Therefore, as we're having a conversation about the three things today, we have to recognize that we don't know what we don't know, and particularly, we cannot anticipate the positive impact we might have on someone else. And no, you don't need to be famous or make millions of dollars or be a New York best-selling author to make a difference for others. And that's why we're here today. My guest today is Stefanie Shore. Welcome. She is a seasoned healthcare professional and dynamic motivational speaker. With over 20 years of experience across emergency medicine, gastroenterology, oncology, and nephrology, she currently works as a nurse practitioner, empowering individuals with chronic conditions to take control of their health. And then she's also a motivational speaker, passionate about helping people rest and reshape their lives, unlock their potential, regardless of past trauma or setbacks. Drawing from her own life experience, overcoming family tragedy, navigating her father's chronic disability, balancing a demanding career with education, fitness advocacy, divorce, and raising children, she offers guidance on building unbreakable confidence in the face of adversity. Welcome, Stefanie. It's such a pleasure to have you today.
Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm so happy to be here.
Awesome. And as you know, we have three questions today. And the first question is serendipity. So why are you here today? What led you in your entire life up to this particular point? And you and I had a conversation about what does it even mean, serendipity? So tell us a little bit what you think about that.
Yeah, I appreciate you asking these three questions. I've spent a lot of time thinking about them over the last few days and what it really means to me. And, serendipity is such a beautiful word. It just sounds so pretty, but it really is just an occurrence of an event by chance, like a happy occurrence that unexpectedly happens in life, that there's no planning or intention for it, but you find yourself in a situation where you feel like the universe is aligning to make things happen for you. And I thought back really far back of like, I love serendipity. In fact, I rewatched the movie this week so that I could, remember why I fell in love with that word. And really, it's opening yourself up to the universe for good things to happen without expectation. And I think when we're really little, we get a lot of expectations of what we need to do. Obviously, we need to, go through schooling, and there's little things we learn how to do, like tie our shoes and so on. But people guide us in different ways to help us understand, what our expectations of ourselves are and others. And as we get older, we start to unravel those and say, do I really want to be this person? And what is it that I want out of life? And for me, I talk a lot about trauma and not having that define you. But very early on, I had a lot of chaos in my childhood, dealt with a lot of illness. My father had a chronic seizure disorder and other chronic elements that really held him back from life. And he really drilled in my head that I had to become something pretty amazing. And, but nobody told me how or what I needed to do. I actually had the gift, which at the time I didn't think so, of no expectation. No one told me when you grow up, you should go into medicine, or that you should become a teacher, or that you should write books or anything like that. And what really began to happen was I started to look for the universe to tell me where I should belong. So I tell people all the time that life made me a nurse and then a nurse practitioner. There's not anyone in my family that's in the medical field. And what I found by happy accidents were along the way, people would start to believe in me. And if I saw someone who was injured, or my father very early on the floor having a seizure, I would run to him and want to help him and want to pick him up. And I found myself very young, alone in a room with him, and he was having a seizure. And I felt like I knew what to do. And somehow I was gifted with the ability to be able to help them. But I kind of put that
Wow.
aside for many years, and I didn't know I would go back into the nursing world, or even start the nursing world. But steps along the way, I got a temporary job at Visiting Nurse Service of New York, and people started to see that I really belonged there.
Mm.
So I went back to get a nursing degree as an adult, because it kept finding me. So that serendipity, those chance encounters where I was in a situation where I had to be the helper, kept like finding me.
I love that you actually went to rewatch the movie. You and I shared that love for that movie that
Yes.
sticks in my head every time I say the word too. Um, so along the way throughout your childhood, obviously these moments with your father are defining moments. Did you thinking about serendipity? Did you meet other people along the way that, whether you knew it in the moment or not, did define or help you define your world and where you were headed?
Yes, absolutely.
Could you give us
And
some examples of that, of
yeah,
those
sure.
people?
So I think I was very fortunate enough to have a best friend growing up whose family would take me in when I had a lot of trauma and chaos going on in my house. And I would sleep over her house on weekends and share holidays with her. And her family would joke around and call me their adopted daughter. So
Mm-hmm.
although I didn't have maybe the ideal childhood, I got to be a part of another one. And I think having that experience of someone else taking me in and loving me and seeing my light allowed me to further myself and say, you know what, other people can see your light. Maybe, there's other places that I can go. So I always had a future in mind. I always said, when I grow up, I'm going to do this and live here and be this type of person, because I think if you have goodness inside of you and you continue to shine your light, people will see it and people will help you. I had a very distinct moment when I was in high school where a guidance counselor saw that I was actually not doing well. I was coming to school very disheveled and dirty on certain occasions, and she made a home visit to my house.
Mm.
It was an apartment at the time. I grew up in New York City, and she told me that I deserved so much more. And she got me involved in a program in New York City. It's a cooperative program where I was able to go to school one week and work one week in New York City at the World Financial Center. I was only 15 years
Wow.
old, turning 16, and I was walking down the corridor to the World Trade Center and working with great people at American Express, getting to see that there's so many different walks of life. So,
Mm.
along the way, I got to meet a lot of people who, had so many amazing things going on, and kind of got to be like a fly on the wall and say, this
It's
is
really
possible.
amazing. It's amazing how, like, a school counselor, high school counselor, suddenly takes on this initiative and makes a big difference in your life. And the same way with this other family of yours, with your best friend, that's taking you under their wings a little bit. This is where we really don't know what we don't know when things happen, and how we interact with people and what impact we can make on them. So this is really interesting. And another question I have for you is, as a healthcare professional, you described some heavy history with your family and your father, and you and I share similar stories in that matter, in that sense. Do you feel like we become healthcare professionals partly because of our experience as kids?
Absolutely. I always used to joke when I was going for my first bachelor's degree that I spent $75,000 on therapy. It was it was therapy that would pay off later so that I could have a
That's insane.
profession. I feel that I was in a position several times that there was no one there to help me. And I felt like the best way to take control is to have tangible skills to help others.
Mm-hmm.
Because I actually found myself feeling the least stressed in the most amount of chaos, because first I was used to being in a chaotic situation, but this time I had the ability to change the scenario. And you can't solve every problem. Like, you can't necessarily fix everything when you're taking care of someone else. Like, example would be in the emergency room, but you can do really tangible things at that moment to stop someone's pain or to stabilize them.
Mm-hmm.
And I would often say, I felt like no one was there to help me, and I never want another person to feel that way. So how can I do that? Is by becoming a healer. And I think it's really important to take people along with you on your healing journey and not forget where you came from. And sometimes not forgetting where you come from is really providing service.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And you also have a long experience as a nurse as well. Can you tell us a little bit more of your professional journey? Like, why did you become a nurse practitioner, and why did you choose the specialties that you have been involved in?
So, yeah, so like I had mentioned before, life really made me a nurse. I had gotten a position at Visiting Nurse Service in New York, and I was doing more administrative work. I had just moved into an apartment on my own. I was going to school and working at the same time, and I would help these nurses with presentations in buildings in New York City. There were congregate care programs where the nurses would go into the building, set up an office, turn a janitor closet into a place where they would do their office work so they could go to people's houses so they wouldn't have to leave their home.
Mm.
And I would help set up their presentations, run the flu programs. And I said, you know what? I really found myself on the phone with these patients and calling them. I said, I want to be that person. I don't want to just be sending other people out there. I want to be that person. And I really kept finding many, many things that made me feel like I have to go back to school and become a nurse, a nurse. And then I went into emergency medicine. I don't know why. I just, I felt that adrenaline, and I'm like, I have to become an ER nurse. I want to learn it all. I want to be the best at what I
Yeah, well,
do.
let me guess. You saw your father having seizure alone in the house, right? I mean, that's emergency
Right.
care. Hmm.
Yeah, and I also had a uncle who was on dialysis, who was constantly in and out of the hospital, and I had a lot of other little incidents that had happened along the way, and I really wanted to be the best, and I wanted to know as much as I can, and I did emergency medicine for about 6 years. I worked nights in the ER while I had children,
Oh
and
goodness.
and I also fell in love with oncology, and I did infusions. When you become a ER nurse, you become very good at IV skills, and you
Hmm.
have to be able to put a line in someone very quickly. So I kind of, even egotistically wise, drew on my skills and said, you know what, I'm really good at IVs, so I have to do something that continues with these skills. Because when you work in an environment where you do something for another person instantaneously and they thank you, it makes you feel like a rock star. Like,
Yes.
I'm like, this
Yeah.
is what it must feel like when Billy Joel like performs in Madison Square Garden and everyone's clapping. When you go home and you're like, I know that if I wasn't there today, this wouldn't have happened. You feel
Mm.
that way. But so as I started to, progress in my career, and actually when the pandemic hit, I felt like I knew nothing. So I went from working in this ER, and I went from learning all these skills, and I felt like I knew a lot of things, but not enough to be an expert. And I
Mm.
decided to go back to school to become a nurse practitioner because I wanted to know the why. A lot of times nurses, including myself, will um, have a doctor prescribe something and say, why did he prescribe that? Or think they know better. But do
Hmm.
you know better? I mean, that's, did I know why? Did I know what should be the other form of therapy? Not really.
Mm.
So when you become a nurse practitioner, you really learn how to assess and diagnose and learn more about the pathophysiology of things. So for me, it was the quest for ever, going education and learning. And forever I have the why. And
Yeah.
how can we make this better? And I developed the confidence to say, I should be that person that makes those decisions. But you really need to have the education and to have the experience to be able to make those, hard decisions when you become a provider versus a nurse. And, it's definitely a challenge on its own, but I'm
Yeah.
always up for a challenge.
Well, I hope our listeners can already see the passion shine through in Stefanie's words, and also that you've been manifesting your life pretty much all your life. You're a big manifester. So I want to switch to the second question, which is purpose, and understand for our audience. You also are a motivational speaker and you coach people in ways that are really inspiring. And usually we don't hear that from a healthcare professional. So tell us a little bit more about what is it that's driving you and that you're building for the future.
So for me, I've always been all about being so thankful and leading with gratitude first. I really do feel like I kind of won the lottery to be here alive now in 2024. And I've never taken it for granted that I am here with these opportunities. And as I've grown, because unfortunately of not having that clear path and maybe being unresolved with my childhood, I spent a lot of years trying to untell my story. So what I would do is
Untell your
I
story.
untell my
Untell.
story.
Interesting.
So what I wanted to do, and I discovered this, with growth, is I wanted to become so different from my childhood and who I thought I was labeled as a younger person, that I would create this life that looked nothing like my previous life, and no one would see any of those flaws.
What were you? Where were you labeled at?
Just as someone who came from maybe a poor family that was chaotic, having a father who was strange. I had an aunt who was schizophrenic. Just a lot of internal family struggles and arguments. Living in an area that maybe wasn't as good as others, growing up in the inner city.
Yeah, and how people look at you, and it
How
kind of
people
starts
perceive you.
building your identity basically
Yes,
over the years.
yes. My identity was, I was really a people pleaser, and I wanted people to feel, that I was, a great person, and I wanted them to see me shine, and I didn't want to disappoint anyone because, I learned very early on to be quiet, and you don't talk when other people are talking. No one wants to hear what you have to say.
I'm sure a lot of people listening to you right now would say, "Oh yeah, I know that one." Yeah, we resonate with that, right?
maybe you want too much. I was told that maybe I was told by people I cared about that
You're
maybe I
too
wasn't
ambitious.
too
You-
ambitious, not content with my life. You always want more. Why can't you just be satisfied?
That's amazing, right? Our brain is telling us status quo, like certainly don't make waves, don't change anything, just be quiet, leave it alone.
Leave it alone. Exactly. Leave it alone. So I was going to create this life that was so beautiful and looked so good on the outside that you would never have to know my story. People would just think, wow, I make it look easy. I didn't really talk about my trauma. I didn't talk about my past. I didn't talk about my family. I just wanted to present myself, and I still do
Polished.
in a positive way, as someone who has it together. And also not to burden other people. I thought, really, because I did come from a place of love, is I thought I didn't want to be a burden, because I definitely felt like being another child in my family was being a burden.
Oh my goodness.
And I really realized over the past few years, I went through a lot of transitions in my life, especially when I was becoming a nurse practitioner. I also was going through a divorce at that time and raising 3 children. And for my children, I felt like, you know what, it's time to tell my story, because my story not only would help myself, but it would help other people. And it's okay to tell your story. And maybe I kind of felt like I was at a place where I was able to validate myself enough to tell my story. And I don't want other women or younger people to not feel good enough where they are today. And I think that's kind of my mission, is for people to understand that their purpose is greater than their moment now. We go through very mundane things. We have all these
Yeah.
tasks to do day to day. Um, but if you have a purpose, all those things, those day to day tasks are not important, because you realize no matter how hard the days are, no matter how much you're struggling, that eventually your voice will be heard and you will be able to help other people move along and feel a little better each day.
Yeah, that's why I love that word purpose along with serendipity. That's why it's question number 2. And we talked to I want to hear more about how you help people outside of the hospital, but we had a little bit of a conversation, you and I, around end of life and having purpose, and how do you look back into your life, particularly when you're a caregiver and you have this, I would call it, a wonderful opportunity to hold hands with the dying, because there are some real conversations happening there. Could you comment a little bit on that?
So I think that, that's a very hard thing to question and talk about death. And um, it's really important and very purposeful to be able to make an impact on someone's life, when even when they're at the worst stage of their life and about to pass.
Mm.
um, that is the most vulnerable time in a person's life, and it is an absolute privilege to spend time with someone in their most vulnerable time, because that is such a gift that they're giving you. They have very limited time, and they need you to be there as a source of comfort and guidance, and to help them feel a little better. And sometimes the biggest thing that I've seen that people really want at the time of their death is to tell their story. And they have these wonderful, beautiful highlights of things that maybe they've done, or their family has done, and great, great stories
Mm.
of resilience and triumph. And even the people who also have regrets, they also feel better when they discuss it with you.
Sometimes it's the first time they actually talk about what they accomplished
Right.
or what they regret. And have you what do people regret, and how do they manage this at the end of their life?
This is a very hard one. People, in my experience, regret the most is not spending time with people that they love, and they worried about things that weren't important. And the biggest regret for people is also not taking care of their health sooner,
Mm.
and saying, I do a lot of education with patients, preventative health, and with chronic kidney disease and diabetes and high blood pressure. And I'll even sometimes have someone in their 70s or 80s tell me, no one's ever quite put it that way. I wish I would have taken care of my health sooner. So a lot of people spend many
Hmm.
years building success. And, a lot of times success to people is defined as richness and having wealth, but they will spend all that money in the last parts of their life to fix it, you
Yeah.
know? So
Yeah,
a lot of
that's
times
the
it's their health
challenge. That's the
is their biggest
challenge
regret.
of defining what health means for yourself, and also what happiness means. And in a way, it's kind of one and the same. And yeah, I've had those experiences as well, of people at the end of their life not fully at peace, and it's you can give them as much as possible to feel that peace, and eventually they find it, because that's why you pass, is when you have kind of reconciled everything. But it's sad that we don't have advocates that help people realize this sooner, because when they realize it, they are about to pass. So basically, life coaches and motivational speakers like you can provide that message much earlier to people, and that's how we can help others. So tell us a little bit about how you help other people in your outside of the hospital. How do you help people?
So a lot of times the way I help other people is also by helping them to see their story. And I've been talking a lot about this recently. I post a reel on Facebook or Instagram every day with a little bit of a tidbit of something that has been going on in my head. But, I struggle between making people feel like could do so much more, but also meet them where they are to understand that they are worthy today
Mm.
of feeling great about themselves, because there's such a big push right now to live your best life, to show up as your best self. And I do agree with that. I do agree that we have to prepare for the future and we have to work on ourselves, but we also have to find acceptance in where we are and meet ourselves where we are. And, I like to help people to understand that they can transform and change, but first they have to accept.
Mm.
And they have to accept who they are right now, and they have to be willing to look in the mirror and say, where do I want to be? So instead of where do I want to be in 10 years, you can also look in the mirror and say to yourself, if I stay where I am today, and it might be okay, will I be satisfied?
Hmm.
So I am a big component of scheduling your destiny.
I love
So
it.
what I mean by that is like how we scheduled this podcast today to talk. There's a million things we need to do. This is my one day off this week, and you wonder throughout the week, do I have the time for this? Yes, you absolutely have the time to do something for yourself. We set those alarm clocks every day to go to work, and we're definitely going to be there because we know we have to pay our mortgage or a bill or something like that, but we need to set that time for ourselves. So what I do is I help people to see that they could be confident in who they are right now, to take that initiative to schedule something in their lives, even if it's something small, like going to a event, or saying that they're going to put some time on the calendar to go to the gym,
Yeah.
or schedule a preventative visit with their practitioner for their health, that they're capable of doing it. And you could be in a very bad position. You could have so many things stacked up against you, but you can do little things, micro doses every day to improve your life.
And
And I
it's
just, yeah,
action oriented. It's something, it's not just thinking, oh yeah, I'll do this, or I'll it's on the plan. It's much more practical, tactical, like material. Like you do something. You're gonna go
right.
somewhere, you're gonna talk to someone, you're gonna make some research for yourself. It's very action oriented.
Right. You have to put it on the calendar and then you have to show up.
Right.
And
Show
showing
up for
up is the
yourself.
best thing, because it's so funny, because when we show up, people really do want to see you and want to spend time with you. And when you show up, especially with a smile and excited and open to serendipity, right? People love that. People, I know I do. When I see someone and I walk into a room and they look at me and they smile back, I feel great. And
It's
for that
beautiful.
moment, nothing else matters, right?
Yeah. You said something. I'm gonna look at my notes because you said something in a recent post that really resonated with me. You said people may be jealous of where you are now, which is your outcome, but they are not jealous of how you got there. And that speaks to really some of the hurdles we go through to get to a certain point. And it also speaks to manifestation. Like, how do you manifest your life? And you've given me so many examples in your own life of how you manifested. Do you want to share some of that? I mean, you already talked about becoming a nurse, but there are other things that you did, including the first example you gave me was this party that you talked about. Okay, do you want to share that little story? It's
Yeah. So
wonderful.
I was having a very hard time when I was becoming a nurse practitioner to complete my classes. I had 3 children, which I still do. I had a full-time job that they don't go away, right? And it was tiring. It was exhausting. And one of the things that I did to hold myself accountable was I scheduled a party for myself post graduation. And I had a great friend, and this is what we were talking about. Connection is so important on this journey. You can't do it without other people, just
Mm.
like you talked about in the beginning of who are those people in your lives. So my friend Sarah, who I was in school with, I said to her, listen, we're gonna walk on the day of commencement. We're gonna not only be, taking our degree, but we're gonna have passed the boards. And I told her, I am gonna tell you right now, I am not walking until I pass the boards, and I'm scheduling myself a party. And when I go to this party and I speak in front of my friends and family, I am going to be able to tell everybody that I am a nurse practitioner. Not that, because in the back of my head, and this is, the driving force is I love concrete, there's evidence when it comes to nursing, and I love evidence. So I needed the evidence that this is who I am unequivocally. So I scheduled it, and I actually created a board for myself with a silhouette of someone in a cap and gown holding a stethoscope, and my tagline, was schedule your dreams and they become your destiny. So I feel like it's a little bit of a play on words, but it's the truth. If you schedule it and you put it out into the universe and you say, this is who I am, then everything along the way will help you to get there to become it. It really does work that way because there's no option then. If you
Right.
book a room and you put a down payment, there's pressure. And sometimes it's okay to put pressure on yourself when you're doing something that's going to fulfill you.
And it's a commitment to yourself. And
The
then
commitment.
probably what I realized in my own experience of manifesting is then every decision you make, every step you take between the now and that time that you scheduled, you're gonna likely make those steps in that direction because it's already set as a destination. And that's what's fantastic about manifesting is if you don't set that course, then you're not as likely as taking the steps in that direction because the direction is not clear. But you bring clarity when you start putting things in motion like this and you commit to it. You booked the place, you started drafting the whole poster. It's just amazing how things work when you put yourself in that vibration.
And when you do one thing and it works out, it becomes addictive. This is a
Ah,
good addiction. You're like, if I could do this, what else can I do?
what can I create? How can I create my day and my life? Do you have anything any specific habits for your own self care that you want to share with other people that you potentially recommend to others?
Well, I definitely recommend writing down your thoughts. I really do walk away from, like, especially when I see a patient during the day and I learned something new about a way to help someone better take care of their health. I'll write down that win. I think it's so important to take time to reflect on the things that you do during the day. And journaling is so important. It's funny, for a while, I stepped away from that. When I was younger, I used to have books and books and diaries full of writings. And as I got older, with social media and everything else, you just repost someone else's quote or you like something that someone else did. But I took time to, and I do on a daily basis, take time to look at something, whether it's a quote or something else, and then redefine it and how it makes sense to myself.
Mm.
Another thing that I do is I exercise. It is really such a good thing for the body and the brain, and it's a natural source of dopamine. I always tell people that 30 minutes of exercise is the same as a dose of an SSRI, and there's been
Mm.
so many evidence-based studies to show that. So I move my body.
And better than
I
drugs.
Yes, the way kind of drugs. Yes, and there are some really great miracle drugs out there right now, but nothing comes close to exercise. And even things that you do, in the industry right now, they go hand in hand. You can't get away from it.
Hmm.
Cognitively and emotionally. When you look good, you feel good, and it allows you to do more of the things you love when you take care of your health. So I will find time to exercise. And it's funny because it's hard to give someone else advice on when to do it because I will literally do it however I can. If I can't do it in the morning, I will do it in the evening. I had a friend of mine who's a physical therapist who I met like 7 or 8 years ago. I used to see that she would not only be a gym member, but she would lift weights at home. She was part of these different classes. And I realized that you don't have to have one source on a way to exercise, because a lot of people think if I paid for a gym membership, I can't go somewhere else because I already paid for this. You can.
Right.
You can do other things. You're not, forced to just do it one way. So even if it's 15 minutes today, that adds up to a lot of time. So I think movement and journaling would be those two main self-care things I do daily.
Yeah, that's great. And what do you aspire to do next? Like, what is your next big manifestation?
It's my big miss. Oh, that's to travel the world.
And we didn't prep those questions, by the way. My guests only know about the 3 questions, nothing else. So
No, nothing else. Absolutely. That's a good question. I think my big thing would be to speak in front of young women, maybe high school students, and talk to them about understand their needs and their fears, especially with the ever changing dynamic of social media. I think it's so important to be able to help younger women.
that is great. I have goosebumps as you're telling me this, which means you're on the right track, because I can already see like a whole amphitheater of young students facing you, and you're on stage, and you're inspiring and motivating and helping them understand that how they can build their life. So I think this would be really great. So let me know when that happens.
Okay.
Because it will. It will.
It will.
All right.
Yeah.
So let's go to our last question. The last question is humanity. What does that mean? It means, again, we're all connected. And you have set your course in your life to live your purpose and help others. And so we are live on the platform that will be seen, recorded, rewatched. And so you have this opportunity to just send out a message of what can humanity take action on. What would you want people to do so that as a human species, we get even better and maybe happier and maybe more peaceful?
I think the thing about humanity that comes to me is really to be kind to one another. It seems so simple and not hard to do, but we really need to meet people where they are and understand that, everyone is going through something, a battle that we know nothing about. And even if they aren't even going through something so big, we all live in our own minds. We can make, a heaven out of hell and a hell out of heaven. So if you could be kind and give grace to someone or people you meet along the way that, you normally wouldn't do that, do it. Like, I think find as much time as possible to provide service and
Amazing.
to constantly spend time with people who are different than you. I think sometimes as we get older, we get very comfortable and we want to be around people that are like us, and we want to kind of take a break and we don't want to do the hard things, but do the hard things. When something happens, don't let someone else pick up the buck. Sometimes even I've been in a situation where I've been at a store and something went wrong, and don't walk away, don't walk out the door if you see someone fall down. Be that person that walks over there and stays with them. I find myself more than not, I don't know why. I always say I'm in the right place at the right time. People say, oh, you're in the wrong place at the right time. But
It's all about perspective, isn't it? Right? It's the way we look at our own life and put the narrative in our heads. You're in the right place. I find
myself in all these situations where someone needs medical help outside of a hospital. But the truth is keep your eyes and your ears open and look at your environment and those around you. One of the things that I found the most is just being there for other people and caring for them and listening to their perspective. If someone sounds angry when they're talking to you, like right now we're going through a huge, political climate with election coming up, and instead of pointing fingers and dividing people to different sides, find some commonalities with those people. It doesn't take away from you to understand someone else. It doesn't take away from you to give someone grace. It only adds to your life. It only makes you better.
That's great. So we're going to wrap up soon. I want to ask you another question, which is, I am so impressed by your energy and your forward momentum, and this we can see your energy of giving, and I see even more potential. Like, I want more from Stefanie. So are you going to write a book? Are you going to be in a movie? Like, what is there any other, you're going to be in front of high school students. That's one thing, but can we dream bigger? Like, tell me more. How can I see you in a few years?
Oh, wow. So, well, I'm open to serendipity for sure. So let's see how that works out. But I would love to write a book. I created this, consulting business called The Reset. And part of that is to be able to look at your life where you are and be able to pause and start over again and reshape your life in the way that you want it to at any point in time. You can say thoughtfully that this is not where I want to be and I want to move somewhere else and do it without harming others is number one. But I want more people to feel like they have a witness to their lives. And I think that I would love to write a book called The Reset and
I love it.
give guidance to others on just different things that you can do to, face your challenges and be resilient, and how, despite any challenges or burnout, that you will keep going because you have this purpose. I would love to contribute in any way I can to the healing of the world through, providing guidance on preventative health. Would love to see myself on, one of the morning talk shows, giving
There you
updates
go.
on, sunscreen and healthy foods and exercise. But more than that, in my own personal life, I think that that's honestly the most important thing, is for the connections I do have and the people I serve to feel a little bit better about themselves and feel that awesome connection
Yeah.
when I meet them. Because
So
honestly, all the big things I could dream of, and yes, it would be amazing to be on stages and for people to listen to me, but I really want people to feel like they have a witness to their life. Because at the end of the day, what we all want, and maybe what I want, is to have a witness to my life and to
that's beautiful.
thank
A
you.
witness to your life. And you have a beautiful tagline as well on, I think it's on your LinkedIn page, saying, helping people reshape their lives through building unbreakable confidence and discipline. So how can people find you then? What's the best way for them to find you?
The best way is I'm always posting a new video every day or a few days on Instagram or LinkedIn. Those would probably be the best ways to find me, or Facebook.
And how do you find? Do they search your name, or do they search The Reset?
Yes,
Or okay.
Exactly. Yeah, Stefanie R. Shore.
Awesome. All right, Stefanie, this was great. I'm just going to wrap it up. What I think I kept from, like, key nuggets from this conversation, I captured 3. There's a lot more if you want to listen to it again. One is not take things for granted, not take your life for granted. The second one was write the wins, have a journal, exercise gratitude for yourself and for others. And then the third one you said was kindness. I love this one. Kindness, do the hard thing. You see someone who needs help, just provide that help. Go and support other people. So that was really beautiful. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. Is there one last word you want to say?
I just think be open to the universe and what the universe has to offer you, and know that through that you will definitely find your purpose and you will help humanity.
Yeah. And I thank the universe for having put us on the same path.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Bye.